Hey y'all, this is the time of day when we get this initial screen up and we let all the notifications go out and we let folks come join in if they choose to. If you are watching this on replay and are catching this after the fact, go ahead and jump ahead a little bit. When you see the picture that's up now disappear, you know it's time to go. And it appears that time is now. Hey y'all, happy Sunday. How's it going out there? Hope everybody is having a good day. Hope everything is going your way. Well, with the current world situation, don't imagine don't imagine things are going much of anybody's way. What can you say? So let's go ahead and get right in and do a little bit of a CNC roll call here. We have Matt Haas, awesome wood things, awesome piano stuff, all things YouTube. Matt, you just need to make one blanket channel and call it all awesome things and just, be done with it because you've got so much stuff going on. I don't know how you sleep. One of the busiest people online. Alejandro Alvarez, Troy Pritchard, Ice Cream 62. How you doing over there, my friend? Hope everything is going well for you. Let's see. We have Jack Painter, Kurt Briegel. We have Steve Nealon from Harneal Media, who sponsors Mark Lindsay CNC, by the way. MarkLindsayCNC.com, that is. Excellent web host. And if you're looking into a website, big or small, just want a web store online, just want to set up merch or what have you, he's the guy. He can hook you up if you're thinking about getting T-shirts or baseball caps or a whole variety of stuff. Steve is your guy. He can hook you right up. I'm telling you. Mario Medina, excellent video today. Thank you very much, sir. Roger the Tinker. John Cousins from Wood If I Could. Excellent scroll saw man. Excellent scroll saw man. Dale Francis from Utah. Dave Kraus. Yeah. Ayel Peleg from Israel. Truly an international crowd here. Let's see what we got going. We have Kevin Els from South Africa. Ronald Ledger, Grant from Ottawa. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your channel name, my friend. Eli Fuentes, Francisco Paz from Brazil. Jeff Stryker, David Crook, Bob Heltebridle, poster of all things rude, crude, socially unacceptable, but otherwise funny as heck. You're a twisted man, Bob. That's one of your endearing charms. Let's see. Stephen Main, Charles Lawrence, Mr. Dave Gatton himself, coming to us from Gatton Central in beautiful Georgia. Y'all need to be subscribed to his channel. If you're not, there's just a problem. I'll put a link to his channel in the description after this goes live. Let's see. Jim Hester, checking in from Kentucky. Tim Lovejoy, Stephen Farmer, Michael Bell, Richard Poulin, Wayne C.K. from Wales. All right. Let's see. Podman, Mark John, Larry Blair, Scott Wilson. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. I do appreciate it. I appreciate it big time. Let's see. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of discussion about rest machining. I had a few questions already in the comments, but I see Ayal Peleg up here has posted a question. He's asking, what does the menu from your video do if you forget to press the control key? it does nothing. It will actually copy to the clipboard, but it doesn't actually put it over into the component tree. You have to hold down Control to place that component into the component tree. So that's it. Basically, that's the command to copy that and put it in the component tree. So hope that answers the question. Let's see. Kurt Briegel, can you clarify the modeling plane? Not sure I quite understand that versus material thickness or top of the material. Okay. Yeah, let me go ahead and bring up Aspire, and then we'll go into a share screen here. Make sure I am sharing, and I am. Okay. Looking at the 3D view, I'm going to have to go ahead and close the preview, which I'm loath to do. But if we look in the 3D view, you'll see this representation of the material here. Let me go back over here to the modeling tab. You'll see this representation right here. It looks like the surface of the material. This is the modeling plane. And the way it differs from the material surface is this is the plane that all of these models are built on. Whether you're in additive mode right here, your combined mode is additive. It's adding this entire model on top of this plane, and you're building up models from here. Remember that VCarve and Aspire both, they all model starting from the bottom up. Well, they have to have something to sit on, and that's what this modeling plane is. Now, one of the questions I got in the comments was, why didn't I put a zero plane here when a zero plane is needed to clean up the edges of, especially on a dish? And the guy who asked the question was absolutely correct. I should have put a zero plane here, but I didn't want to add confusion by adding too many steps. So I just kind of kept it basic, because what we're concerned with is the detail on this anchor. We weren't really concerned with what's going out here. When you add a zero plane to the top of the model, it now knows that this is the surface of your material, and that modeling plane down here is what all these models have been modeled on top of. And this is now the surface of your material. I hope I didn't just confuse you, but if I remove that zero plane or just turn it off, we're going back to the modeling plane that you're building up from. Then when everything is built up, the zero plane adds the surface of the material and integrates it with the models that you have out here. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if that confuses you or what. Let's see. Jonathan W., the man himself, Mr. Rusted Metal, making masterpieces. No time to stay, just stop in to say hey. You're always welcome, Jonathan. Hope that answers your question, Kurt. Let's see. Bob Heltebrightel, 1 million views. Yeah, I was going to acknowledge that. Oh, man. I woke up to that this morning and saw that my rinky-dink little channel went over 1 million views this morning. And believe me when I say nobody is more surprised than I am. Two things here. One, thank you. I never expected anything like this. I was just trying to help people avoid throwing their machine out the window. Two, we got to get you folks a hobby. if you're gonna sit and watch that many of my videos, we have to get you a hobby. But thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Scott Wilson, I'm sure that you have an extra PC to run your software. I don't know what you necessarily mean by that. I do all of this on to be honest, it is a gaming PC, but a gaming PC is not necessary to run VCarve or Aspire. The gaming PC is simply because of my rendering software for video editing. I needed a bigger, better computer for editing and rendering videos. I have run VCarve on, Windows 7 machines that are 10, 11, 12 years old. So, it's just I do have a separate PC running Windows XP outside on the CNC that runs Mach 3, and that's all it does. But as far as having a separate PC, not necessary for anything like that. Let's see. Dave Gatton, I thought rest machining meant you could take a nap while it's running. Turns out I've been doing it all wrong. No, you've been doing it right. You got the cameras mounted, and you can hear. So, let's see. Yep, thanks. Are there other menu items with similar behavior? Yeah, there are a bunch of them. Way too many to count, and I'm still exploring all of the options that are into this. Remember, I've had Aspire for a little bit less than a year, so I'm just getting into all the capabilities built into it and still learning the 3D modeling aspect of it. So, let's see. Is there a way to carve the anchor and bowl a little shallower? Yes, there is, Dale. Let me go back into Aspire here. We'll go back into the 3D view, and let me go back to a straight Z view. That has to do with the properties of the anchor. Now I've got the anchor selected here. We'll go up here into the properties, and we see the shape height. I referenced this just briefly in the video, but we've got a shape height of 3525. And if we kind of turn this, we can see that means that the lowest point it's cutting down in here is that thickness here. Now, if I bring it down, let's say to 1/4 of an inch, and let it update, we see how that. Now, if you look down at my readouts down here, you can see that the lowest point it's cutting is 1/4 of an inch deep. So that's all to do with the shape height here. Okay. And it also updated the zero plane because it now believes that this being the surface of my material, the distance from my zero plane down to my modeling plane is only 1/4 of an inch because that's as deep as it's going to cut. So, but that's controlled right here in the properties with the shape height. Now I'm going to Control Z to undo that, and we're back to my regular normal height, and we'll go back to a straight Z view. I hope that answered that question. So let's go back here and look for more questions. Michael Roy said, okay, wait a minute. Let me go back all the way and get them in order here. Kurt Briegel, thanks. So how does one decide how far down in the material the modeling plane is? Okay, there are a couple of ways of doing that. Let me go back to Aspire. And I should just actually look at this stuff before I switch back and forth. If you're using clip art or you have drawn a model and you are not importing something, you can adjust where the modeling plane is by coming over here into Material. Let me cancel that. Come over here into Material Setup, click on Set, and adjusting the model position in the material. That's not exactly the same thing, but it's close to adjusting where this modeling plane is in relation to your block of material here. Now, if you're importing a model, whoops, wrong one. If you're importing a model, that comes within that import screen. Let's see, file. Nah, I don't want to import a model on top of this. When you import, you will place where the modeling plane is in relation to the model, because it doesn't know. You have to establish that when you're importing. But if you're using the clip art down here in the clip art library, it assumes your modeling plane is going to be down here at the base of your material, and you're either adding or subtracting this model from that modeling plane. So, I saw that someone else asked, how do you add a zero plane? Let me turn it off. In fact, I'll just go ahead and delete it. Let me turn it back on. I'll just go ahead and delete the zero plane. The zero plane is over here in the modeling tab, and it's in the top row under modeling tools right here all the way to the left. They don't actually name it zero plane. If you hover your cursor over it, it says add a plane component with zero height covering the model. So you just click that, it adds a zero plane to the component tree, and there it is. And that is in VCarve or Aspire. Both of them. So, somehow I got my origin showing here. That's okay. No problem. All right, hope that answered those two questions. So let's see. Mark John wants to know, do I have a Patreon page? No, I do not. I've not signed up for Patreon, mainly because I don't have anything extra to offer patrons. I don't have time to make additional videos. And so I don't have any premiums to offer folks. So I really have nothing additional to add to make it worth becoming a patron. So, I mean, I don't talk about it a lot, but there are links in the descriptions if you'd like to donate to the channel. There's PayPal me, or there's also, links to my T-shirt shop where you can buy the various T-shirts or coffee mugs or what have you. And that way you get something for it too, So there are a bunch of different options that I don't talk about it. But no, I do not have a Patreon page. So, let's see. Carl Gierke, I noticed you had to enter the anchor points. Do we always have to go into edit and clean up the clip art that comes from Desktop Pro Aspire? I thought that it came ready to carve. For the most part, it does, Carl. I edited the vector around the anchor because it just didn't join up at that point. Now, if I would have raised my modeling resolution to something a little higher, it might have. But the anchor model itself, I didn't have to edit at all. It does come ready to carve. What I did was edit the vectors that I put around it, which does not come with the model. That was the whole point of the video, was to create those vectors. So, and you may not have to. You may not have to do any editing at all. You may not have to go in and convert the vectors to curves, to Bezier curves like I did. It just depends on the tracing, the quality of the tracing that you get when you do the bitmap trace. So my main reason for showing all of that was to show you that if that happens, this is how you fix it. So let's see. Mark John, stay at home time helps views. Well, to a point, but stay at home doesn't mean stay out of the shop. You know, I just wish I could convince my better half that staying home doesn't mean go outside and dig holes. So, never understood that. I dig the holes, but she's the gardener. Go figure. Let's see. Hey, Mark, how do we get a PDF drawing in VCarve from Albert Drew? Very simple. Let me go back over to a screen share again here and get rid of the pop-out chat. Go back over here into my drawing tab, go into my 2D view, and boom. There, let's see, you go File, Import, Vectors. And one of the choices is PDF in here. Now, a word of warning. Not all PDFs are created equal. Not all PDFs have vectors on them. You'll notice if I come up here to File, Import, Bitmap, well, it used to be, not anymore. PDF was listed too, because some PDF files are actually JPEG snapshots that are saved in PDF format. So if you import a PDF file, you may get some vectors, but you also may have to do a bitmap trace on them. Just be aware of that. So, let's see. Roger the Tinker, I run Windows 7 with only 2 gigs of RAM. Yeah, VCarve and Aspire do not take up a lot of resources. So, let's see. Another way to help explain zero plane would be modeling plane, turn on the draw material block. Yeah, but I think they got the gist of this. So let's see. Wayne CK, on a new project, you set the Z thickness to start off. When you add to the plane, will the model be the thickness set in Z plane, say 3/4 thick? Will the model be that thick? No, Wayne, it won't. You will have to go in and look at your shape height, which is why I did that just in the video. Just went into the properties of that model and checked the shape height. It is very possible to build up a layer of models that is double, triple, quadruple the thickness of your material, because it doesn't care. You can adjust that model thickness, but you can build up models to be thicker than what your material is. So that's another thing. Back over to screen share. That's another thing that's helpful with material setup. I'll close it to go back into it. When you go into material setup over here, you click set. Right here, it lists your model thickness. So if you have models compiled out here, you've built a composite model that's 1.5 inches thick, your model thickness will say right there that it's 1.5 inches thick. And if you have 3/4 inch thick material up here, in red, right down here, it will say error. Your model thickness is thicker than your material. And it will not let you calculate. So that's when you go in. Now you can click this set button right here and you can set a new model height. And what it'll do is it'll go through and it will shorten the height of all of the models and try to compress it down so it'll fit within your material thickness. But the better way to do it would be to just go back over into your modeling tab and select your model, get into the properties, and adjust your shape height so you are in control of how thick one part is versus how thick another part is. So that way, if you have 3 or 4 models out here, maybe you want one to be thinner, maybe you don't want another to be thinner. You are in control of what you do here. So that was my point in that. So let's see. Let's go back out here and check for questions. Alrighty. Are we about out of questions for this? Jeff Stryker says there's an online cheat called 78 Shortcuts for Aspire. It's a PDF file, easy to find. Google. Thank you for that tip, Jeff. Also, let me do this one more time here. If you come in to your help menu, second one in is keyboard shortcuts. You click on that, it opens up a browser tab, and there are all your keyboard shortcuts. And there are a ton of them, as you can see. And this is a PDF file that is stored on your computer. You can see right here. It's stored on your computer as part of the help file. And there are all kinds of keyboard shortcuts. Way more than I could ever document. So I am not even sharing that. Am I? Yes, I am. Okay. Alrighty. Hopefully that answered that. Let's see. Albert Drew, PDF import in VCarve. I've tried that, but I get a black screen outlined with red lines around the import PDF. Thanks again. Yeah, as I say, Albert, not all PDFs are created equal. Some of them are just JPEG snapshots. It depends on who created the PDF. I'm not a fan of importing PDF files. I mean, you can do it, but it's kind of like hauling a ton of concrete with a Volkswagen Beetle. You can do it, but do you really want to? It's always easier to try to find a different source of the same vectors. Now, sometimes you have to, but if that's all there is, if that's your only option, that's your only option. So, excuse me. Oh boy, I will be so glad when allergy season is over with. Okay, Wayne CK, great. Thank you for clearing that up. I was wondering with when you expand the image, the model height must or could be thicker than the material first set. Many thanks. Yes, it is possible to create models that are much, much thicker than your material. Roger the Tinker here makes a good point. Converting the PDF to a JPEG often helps. And there are some, I've not tried them, but there are some online converters out there where you can convert file formats from one to the other. They make a lot of assumptions, so in practice, I don't know how well they work. But, it's one of those things where do what you can, but if worst comes to worst, converting the PDF to a JPEG, even if that means, using print screen, put it into Windows Paint, and then importing that photo and doing a bitmap trace on it, even that's better than nothing. So, or import the PDF and do your own trace. I mean, you don't always have to use their vectors. I mean, sometimes you will get better results if you import the bitmap and trace it by hand yourself, unless it's super complex, and I get that. So, Hobby's Wood Shop, maker of the Hobby Box. Link in the description below after we end this live stream. How you doing today? Let's see, Jeff Stryker, have you had luck with single line font or do you always prefer true type? Single line fonts are meant for quick engraving. It's what you use if you're engraving on metals or acrylic or something like that. It's just a single line for the bit to follow. True type fonts are what's appropriate for VCarving. Now, having said that, you can quote unquote VCarve on a single line font, but what you're actually doing is a profile toolpath to a specific depth with a V bit. You're not actually VCarving. VCarving, remember, removes the material between vectors. So with a single line, there's only one vector. It can't remove anything. So I, for the most part, use true type fonts. And I think I have used single line fonts one time. So let's see. Roger the Tinker, changing the properties of the file. Yes, that is true too. Okay. One other thing I wanted to bring up, and like a dummy, I don't have them here. They're out in the shop, and I ran out of time before we went live. And that is, I had a couple of questions on the sanding brushes and the radial discs. And like I say, I don't have one in here to show you. I linked sanding brushes in the video, and what they are is they're a nylon brush about 3-inch diameter, something like that, 2.5, 3-inch diameter, and they chuck into a drill. If it's going to be a short sanding session with those, I use my cordless drill. If it's going to be a longer sanding session, I use my corded drill. They just chuck into the drill and you just fire it up and sand away with that. That I use for broad areas. For getting down into the detail, I use the little Scotch-Brite radial discs, and they're about 1-inch diameter. And they go onto a mandrel. You put three of those discs on at once on a little mandrel, and that gets chucked into my rotary tool. It's not a Dremel, so I don't say my Dremel, but a rotary tool like a Dremel. And that's done for the little detail sanding. Now, I know people get a little bit paranoid when they look at the grits that I'm suggesting. Those are the grits that work for me. For the little rotary discs, the yellow and the white are the ones that I use. And I believe those are 80 and 120. And people get a little paranoid. I just spent 6 hours carving this thing. I'm not using 80 grit on it. That's going to remove detail. It doesn't translate over to the same grit as sandpaper. So if you get an 80 grit rotary disc, it's more along the lines of somewhere around 180 to 220 grit sandpaper. It's not going to remove a bunch of detail. When you get the 120 grit rotary disc, it's more along the lines of a 320 grit, maybe a 400. So don't let those numbers fool you. I use the yellow and the white, and I believe those are 80 and 120. And it's the same thing with the sanding brush. If you get a 400 grit sanding brush, you're basically burnishing and polishing the wood. I use 120 and a 180 grit sanding brush. And that it doesn't remove any of the detail. It just smooths out all of the little milling marks and everything from, like, for instance, that 1/4-inch ball nose I demonstrated this morning in the video. I would use my 120 grit sanding brush on that, and it would take 99% of that out. So, okay, Mark John wants to know, does VCarve allow the use cutter comp and lead in, lead out in the tool settings? It does allow for lead in and lead out. I don't know about cutter comp. I think that might be the same as an offset as far as your cutter. I know what you mean, cutter compensation. But specifically cutter comp, I don't think so. Lead in and lead out, definitely. I haven't demonstrated that yet. I haven't really had much of a need for it myself, but I will put that in one of my videos. So let's see. Jim Hester, how dangerous is it to use a box fan to exhaust fumes and airborne sawdust? Depends on what kind of fumes you're talking about. If they're flammable, it kind of depends on the concentration of the fumes. If you're dealing with flammable fumes, I would look for something more explosion proof personally. But, if you're talking about just dust collection for airborne sawdust, just about every power tool you have is not equipped with an explosion proof motor. So I figure if you're running a router which is not explosion proof and you're concerned with it igniting the dust, you might want to reevaluate what you're cutting. And you should be making chips, not dust. So there's another thing that. Let's see. Michael Bell, the 80 grit disc is all I use now. They will polish hardwoods. Yes, agreed. In fact, I've been going to experiment with a few of the more coarse radial discs. And I tell you, I really love them. When I first started using them, I was buying too fine a grit disc, and they didn't last for nothing. I mean, when I carved the lid on a Paradise box, I went through a whole bag of 20 discs just to do one lid. And I thought, well, these things are worthless. Well, it turns out I was using too fine of a disc. They do wear out. But when I switched to the yellow and white, oh boy, it made all the difference in the world. So I definitely agree with you on that one, Michael. Okay. All right, looks like we are about done. Javi, thank you. I hope the allergies go away soon, too. I do this twice a year, and it's a major pain. So, we'll go ahead and we'll call it good from here. It's basically, don't know what I'm going to do for next week's video yet. I've got 2 or 3 things on the line here. It could be one of a bunch of them. I'm not doing all Aspire videos. I haven't abandoned the VCarve, folks. So next week, no matter what I do, it's going to involve VCarve. It'll be for everybody. It's just that I had enough questions and ran into enough techniques to demonstrate here lately that it looks like it's all Aspire all the time. It's not. So I will put links to Dave Gatton's website, or excuse me, well, I'll put a link to his website too, now that I mentioned it, to his website and his YouTube channel. I'll put links to Javi's website and his YouTube channel. I'll put links to those sanding brushes and the radial discs in the description to this video. And other than that, again, sincerely, folks, thank you very much for all of the views. Thank you for sharing the videos. I see folks sharing them on Facebook, and it blows me away. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Thanks for giving up part of your Sunday to come hang around with me and hoot and holler in this live stream. I mean, you guys are the best. I really sincerely appreciate it. So, with all that being said, let's get outside and go do something cool. Make some chips. Y'all take care.